receive you now in the presence of the Lord. I want to go back and, as we begin our teaching today, as you recall, we've been looking at this word noble. And on your outline, you already have that word noble laid out. And in that outline, we've been looking every week at a different letter in the word noble. But I've also asked you to write down the word noble maybe on the back as well, because I want to go back in here and make sure we understand what noble means according to the word, what it means by way of our Greek definition here. But to begin our time today, I want to ask this question here. Is there anyone you have not spoken to in years?
Amen. Amen.
I don't need you to raise your hand. And so I want to frame this because we're going to look at, when we talk about, our scripture helps us to kind of interact with and recognize what the relationship is between being noble and also those people with whom we have a ruptured relationship. So the next question, is there anybody that you currently have right now a ruptured relationship with? In other words, y'all would hang out all the time. Every time you would get ready to go down to Dennis for some little special meal, always call them up, and now you got them to have call blocking on your phone as well. Is there anybody that has a ruptured relationship with somebody as well? And the last question simply here, is there somebody you were very close to at one point, and now you seem very distant from them now? So as we get ready to take a look at this whole portion of Scripture, now here's the point. Because we know from our end, we say they did something wrong. They would say we did something wrong, and the truth is probably something right there in the middle. So the question is, with these questions in mind, ones with strained relationships, ruptured relationships, the question is, part of being noble says that we're going to do our part to resolve this problem. If there's somebody in our lives with whom, now I'm not going to go back in and talk about who did what and who said what and who, at some point we were close with somebody, and in some cases now that has occurred, part of being noble says that I'm willing to go back out here and do whatever I can do in this situation to go back here and address this problem. That's part of being noble. So Acts chapter 15. So we're looking today really from 2 Timothy chapter 4, but I want to go back and kind of frame a few things for you. So you can just write down these verses now. We're going to turn to 2 Timothy in just a moment as well to take a look at that part. So if we take a look at Acts chapter 15, what has gone on here? Paul and Barnabas have gone on a missionary journey. When they went on a missionary journey, they ended up having at that point John Mark, who was Barnabas's cousin, also went with them. When in the midst of that missionary journey, something happened and John Mark left them. And then in turn, Paul and Barnabas were there alone. When they came back and then months later got ready to go on another missionary journey, then at that point Barnabas says, Paul, I want to take my cousin John Mark with us as well. Paul said, you got to be kidding. There's under no circumstance anybody can go but him. And it says right here in chapter 15, verses 36 through 41, that the contention and the dissension between them was so stark and so strong and so sharp that they went their own separate ways. So then Barnabas took his cousin John Mark one direction. Paul took Silas the next direction. And you know in this chapter, that's when Paul and Silas were at midnight praying, and then the earthquake occurred, and then the prisoners were set free. So but they had this close relationship that got severed, and in turn, Paul did not have any interaction with John Mark for quite some time. Well, look at right here in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 11. The last book Paul ever wrote was 2 Corinthians chapter 4. The last chapter he ever wrote was 2 Timothy chapter 4. And in that book what he says is, I need you now, in the midst of all that I'm going through, I need you to now go get John Mark for me, because it's profitable to me for ministry. I know we had a strained relationship before. I know it was jacked up before. I know we went in separate directions before. But at this point in my life, I'm going to be noble. I need to reach out to the people with whom I have a strained relationship. Now, at this point, he didn't go back and talk about who did what and why you did this and why I did this. All he knew was he had a ruptured relationship with somebody. And in verse 11 it says, I need you. I need him to come back to help me be all God's called me to be. Can somebody just say amen? The idea was that John Mark, although an Acts had left him, Paul recognized the value in having John Mark now. So this is from verse chapter, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 11. Look at these translations. What he says, first of all, in the King James, that it's profitable for John Mark to come back for me. Look what it says right here in NIV, that it is helpful to me in my ministry for John Mark, who deserted me before, to come back now. Then right here in NSAV it says, it is useful for the work that God has for me to do to now make sure John Mark, although he deserted me before, to come back and help me as well. So here's the point right here. So the idea is that part of being noble says that we're going to take an honest assessment in our lives. And everybody here has somebody, let's be clear, everybody has somebody we haven't spoken to in quite some time. Everybody has somebody we wrote off a long time ago. Everybody has somebody, we even wonder why God even made them. We all have somebody in our lives. And what Paul says is, I cannot be who I'm supposed to be if I still have all that ruptured relationship. Now, let's be also clear. Sometimes you can reach out to somebody and you can extend your hand and shake that hand and they slap it. But our role is still to extend the hand. Just because we go back and try to make amends and try to make peace doesn't mean they want to make peace with us. But it says over in the book of Romans chapter 12, as much as is possible, live peaceably with all folk. Wherever, as we go back in our lives and see where those ruptured relationships are, our role, if we want to be noble according to the word we'll see in just a moment, we must go back out and make sure we are reaching out because it's useful, profitable, and helpful as well. Now some folks say, well look, it's not going to be helpful to me because I'm not reaching out. The idea is that whatever that strained relationship is, that nobody knows but you and God, that our role is to say, where is it? Who is it that has caused such pain, such hurt, so much disappointment? And even if it's not my fault as I look at it, what do I need to do to make sure I'm doing all I can to get that thing done? Because we cannot be all God has called us to be until we go back and at least try to resolve it. Even though, please join me right now and give my God a hand clap of praise for knowing the value of going back in and having these relationships as well. Couple right here. I'm not happy. I want to talk to them. So the idea was, so now as we take a look at this word noble, I want to ask that you would look on your outline now. And we're going to ask you now, and we have looked every week. There are 5 letters in the word noble, 5 Sundays in this month. And if you look on the outline, inside the outline, you see noble written down. We're looking at the L today. We're looking at the N, the O, the B already, but the L today. And I want you to go back in. I'm going to give us, rather than waiting to talk about this later on, I want to give us a couple of the L's up front, and we may revisit some toward the latter part of the message. So from 2 Timothy chapter 4, the first L I want you to write down if you would. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 16 through 17 is up on the screen now. Now, all of this is coming from the Amplified Classic translation. Amplified Classic. It says right here, that L, that the Lord stood by me and strengthened me after everybody forsook me. But in the midst of all of them walking away, may it not be charged to their account. That when I needed them the most, folk bounced. That when they needed something from me, I was always there. But when I needed something, they could not be found. And what Paul is saying at this point, when I needed them during that time, they all walked away. But God, please don't charge to their account. That's a level of being noble right there. That's a level of being honorable right now. In the midst of all that is going on, and I look what he says right here. He says, now in the midst of it, even though people walked away and didn't support me, Paul says right here that the Lord gave me strength. So if I didn't have any strength from my friends, and didn't have any strength from my family, and didn't have any strength from folk around me, then right now I knew the Lord strengthened me. After and stood right by my side. Paul was on trial in a kangaroo court, being set up, and all his character witnesses, nobody showed up. He says, in the midst of it all, that God strengthened me, and God stood beside me. How many know that God will stand beside you? How many know God will strengthen you? How many know that God will not turn his back on you? You got to know that when people walk away, that God God is still right there with you. So in the midst of it, but look what he says. Look how noble this is. These people knew what time. They knew to be down in courtroom B at 10 o'clock. And they didn't even show up at all. But in the midst of it, I don't even want to, God, I know you've strengthened me. I know you stood beside me. I don't even want what they did against me to be charged with their account. Lord stood beside me, strengthened me. And after every battle forsook me at that point, may it not be charged against them. That's one L. Now the next L we have right here is from verse 18. Now look what it says here. The Lord, I literally have this written down. The Lord will certainly deliver and draw me to himself from every assault of evil. That regardless of what was trying to be planned against me, and regardless of folks that try to take me down, it says right now that the Lord has delivered, glory, and the Lord has drawn me near, and the Lord's going to deliver me from every evil. So I may not even know a trap was laid, but God has already delivered me for it. In the midst of it all, that God, the Lord, will certainly, not no question about it, deliver me and draw me to himself from every evil assault. And in the midst of that, he's going to also preserve me. Let's read this together in unison. Let's read this together. The Lord will certainly deliver and draw me to himself from every assault of evil. He will preserve me. Can you just give God just a hand clap of praise for being a God that certainly delivers? But look what happens. Look what he said. Not only is God delivering us, in the midst of all the issues that are going on, he is drawing us to himself. Then here's what happens. That's why we get closer to God sometimes because of the valley than we were before, because he draws us closer to him. And then I trust him now more than I did before, because I know at this point it took him to stand by me and took him to strengthen me. It took him to make me realize that my trust and my hope has to be in him and not in them. The Lord at this point will draw me near and draw me away from, look what happened, from every assault of evil, and he will preserve me. Now I know these young people know nothing about preserves, but if anybody's been down to Mississippi at some point, or Alabama, or somewhere in South Carolina, you know there's some preserves that go on down there. They got those little mason jars. They got to get those jars. Then what happens? They go back and boil everything and put it inside the jar, and then they seal it so stuff on the outside can't get in. What it's saying at this point, that God has been so good, I can't allow the hate outside to cause me to affect my love inside. I can't allow the problems outside to affect my praise inside. I can't allow the trouble outside to affect my trust inside. Then I'm going to be preserved in the midst. Now look, he is going through an evil assault. In fact, a few more verses, he's dead. He says that God has stood by me. And God delivered me from every evil assault. And I know in the midst of God, I know he has drawn me to himself. And God is a God of preservation there. And so those are the two L's. We'll maybe hit some other ones as well. So again, the question once again, Paul realized in order for him to end up walking and ending life in a life of nobility, that even though he and John Mark had this strange relationship, he said, I need to have John Mark back because it's useful and profitable, and he's helpful to me in my ministry. Let's read this, our confessions from this month together again. I operate in a spirit of what? Exceptional excellence. Read again, keep going. Through God, I am no longer ignoble, but noble. So as we took a look at this, our theme for this whole month, the sermon title has been From Ignoble to Noble. So we talked about this idea of ignoble before, ignoble. Ig means not. So if we are ignoble, it means not noble. And we talked about this from definition before. So ignoble means dishonorable. It means shameful. And I just love this example. We keep going back to every week. That cheating on an exam is an ignoble or dishonorable or shameful way to get good grades. But also, if you look down there, another synonym for ignoble is just despicable. Not despicable me, but they're despicable and also at that point and being base. So when someone is ignoble, they walk in shame and in dishonor. And because we now are in Christ, shame has been removed. Amen, somebody. Dishonor has been removed. And so we now go from being full of shame to now being full of the Spirit, and in turn because Jesus' blood has washed our shame away. So